Podcast, the Flip Talk podcast behind the scenes as we're recording this. Of course, we are doing this now, and then it'll go live on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play, every place else that you watch this show or listen to it. So I have Pace with me today. We're going to talk about Sub 2, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart because it was the way I started. I started knocking on doors and doing Sub 2 deals way back in 2003. It's crazy to say 17 years ago. I guess that dates me, right? So
that's like, dude, it's crazy. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's like a blink of an eye away, but it's crazy how fast 17 years can fly by, huh?
Yes. by all, it doesn't seem like it, I think, at the time, but when you look back on it, it's definitely something that happens quick. So Sub 2 is something that you are doing a lot of, and that you're out there kind of touting the opportunities and stuff. And it's cool for me to kind of see it because that's how I started. Like I said, the market changed, and we had some different issues with the market, and it didn't make sense there for a while, and now it makes sense all over again. And so I think it's just a cool topic that it's cool for me because it's come full circle. And
right.
So I'm excited to have you on and have that conversation. Before we get into it, let's talk about, who you are and how you got into real estate investing. You've popped up out there. A lot of people know who you are, but for those who haven't seen you or heard you, how'd you get into the real estate investing game? What are you about?
Really quick, because if they want to hear like long versions of it, they can go on Steve Trang's show. But the quick version of it is I was a contractor for 10 years. I was a general contractor here in Phoenix. My main customer was Opendoor, OfferPad, and Zillow. And so I was doing 50 to 60 renovations a month. I've done over 7,000 renovations as a licensed contractor. And I just watched all these fix and flippers making all this money. And I was standing on the sideline begging for them to pay their bills. Now, Opendoor, OfferPad, and Zillow were amazing clients. They paid their bills on time. I made a lot of money from them. I opened up the Dallas market for Opendoor, and I opened up the Las Vegas market for Opendoor in terms of the construction side and the organization there. In that time frame, I had a client that I was also doing fix and flips for. I was just the contractor. I had about 175 employees doing about $15 million a year in revenue. And I was making a lot of money on paper. And people just weren't paying their bills. And then finally, a couple of years ago, I had one of my biggest clients file bankruptcy on me, and I lost $1 million in cash from one client. And it's a long story that I've told on other stuff, but I'll avoid that. I decided to jump into wholesale, which is basically, in my opinion, the gateway drug into actual real estate investing. It's a really good way to have a high paying job, but it's not really real estate investing. And some people will roast me for that. But wholesale is one of the best things in the entire world. So once I discovered that through some of my clients who were fixing and flipping, I jumped in both feet, and I took a handful of my employees from my construction company and went full bore into real estate. And so a lot of people are like, man, you kind of came up from nowhere. Like we just found you. And you made a comment about that a little earlier. When I was a contractor, I was big on Instagram. I was doing all my before and after photos on Instagram, and that's how I got all my clientele. In fact, actually, that's how Opendoor found me. Okay. And so I habitually am posting on Instagram every single day and documenting my journey for the last 10 years. So a lot of people, if you swipe through my actual personal profile, Pace Morby on Instagram, and you go back, you'll be like, wow, this guy's been posting 2-3 times a day for the last 10 years straight. So I think a number of friends of mine, like Steve Trang and Brent Daniels and Jamil Damji, have kind of put me on the map in terms of more and more people are recognizing me because of their influence. But I've been just kind of doing my own thing for the last couple of years, and our team's been doing a pretty good job, I think.
Okay. So how did you stumble into Sub 2? You said you did the wholesaling thing, and that was kind of like it is a job. And like I have a company that wholesales and rehabs, and I have a really, really good team. So it doesn't feel like a job because I don't ever have to be here, but it takes a lot to get to that point, and a lot of people don't. So there's that frustration of you're just constantly turning on that wheel. I'm sure that's what you felt.
Funny thing you say wheel, I call it the wholesale hamster wheel.
Right. Yes, yeah. That's what it's like, right? So, like, what turned you on to Sub 2? How'd you come across it, and what was that like for you?
So I was a HomeVestor franchise owner for a couple of years when I first jumped into wholesale. And for anybody that doesn't know that, that's the We Buy Ugly Houses people. There's 1,100 of us nationwide. I sold my franchise over a year ago and have since, just branded myself. But when I was in the franchise system with We Buy Ugly Houses and I was drinking the Kool-Aid, The way it works for them is that you pay them a check and they make your phone ring. That's it. You don't need to cold call. You don't need to do anything. You literally don't even know what the word KPI or CRM or any of that is. All you do is write a check and your phone rings, right? Well, when I started with them, the cost of a phone call was about $400 in marketing cost. And by the time I left, the cost of a phone call was $1,400 because the market has gotten so competitive. And direct mail, which is their primary source of lead flow, it got so expensive that every time I got a phone call, it cost me $1,400 in marketing.
Wow.
And so what happened to me is I go, there's got to be a better way to monetize than just through wholesale or fix and flip. And I've always been steady on fix and flip. We always have 8 to 12 going on at a time. You know, you hear guys talk about, oh yeah, I'm doing 3 or 4 a month. I'm like, okay, so that means you probably have 18 or 20. Sorry about that. You probably have 18 or 20 in your pipeline at any given time. That's a lot of flips. We stay at like 8 to 12 going on at a time from start to finish. So I'm really only rehabbing like 3 or 4 at a time, right? But I just looked at it and go, man, the lead costs are so expensive. There's got to be a better way for me to monetize on these leads. So I tried the real estate agent route. I tried referring these leads out to agents. That just didn't work because agents didn't want to work that hard. And then I stumbled across a creative financing seminar about 3 years ago, and I started educating myself. And funny thing is, actually here, Jamil Damji is pulling up in his $200,000 car. Hold on a second. Guess who I bought my first subject to from?
No, Jamil.
Jamil, who did I buy my first subject to from?
Me.
What's up, man? This like 2 days ago.
Yeah. How are you, Don?
I'm good.
So Jamil knew I was trying to break into that market. And what he did is he came up to me at one of Steve Trang's pop-ups and he said, hey, I've got one of these subject to houses that I know you've been trying to get into. Do you want to buy it? I still own that house to this day. I still net $600 a month on that property. I ended up wrapping that one out and I just caught the bug and I went crazy. I went and paid for a lot of education. I flew around the country and kind of joined a couple of masterminds with guys that all have gray hairs and have been through it so many times. And I just kind of created my own model inside of it because, you know, Don, you know, creative financing very well. There's nobody that does creative financing exactly the same way.
No. Right.
Because that's why it's called creative financing. You can do it any which way. You can structure things whatever way. And that's what's so fun about it. That's probably why you had so much fun knocking doors and locking those bad boys up back in the day.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
So we went crazy and I told myself, look, I want to get to a point. I remember running with Steve Trang. I run with him 3 days a week. And I was running with him not too long ago. I said, I'm going to create cash flow off these subject twos to the tune of $20,000 net per month. Like after all debt service, overhead, everything is paid. I want to create that structure for myself. And that's my next plateau, of which I'll, you know, create another launching pad and go to another plateau. And we were able to do it really, really quickly. And I think primarily because we have wholesale leads coming in that don't work. Like I have all these leads coming in. I'm sure Don, you guys run into it in your wholesale operation all the time where you're like, yeah, this doesn't work. Give it to a real estate agent, or, hey, it doesn't work this way. How do we do creative financing and wholesale it out to maybe a buy and hold buyer? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so we just went gangbusters and we got a passion for it. And in the last 12 months, we've done about 120 of them. And we currently own and operate a little over 50 of them. We wholesaled about 70 of them out. Okay. And so I haven't done as many as like Mitch Stevens or Ron LeGrand, but sorry about that. So, but we're doing a lot and we're starting to go nationwide. We've got 3 markets that we're buying and acquiring in: Atlanta, Florida, and Texas. And we're just going crazy, I guess.
Okay, very cool. So the explain subject to for somebody who doesn't know what it is. Let's break it down and dumb it down. If somebody's hearing this for the first time,
this will actually be really good. So Jamil actually brought a buyer to, are they inside the house? So I'm at a house right now that I own subject to. Jamil has a buyer that came in from Los Angeles who has $1 million in cash and she's looking to buy rentals. And I got on the phone with her a little bit ago and I said, why would you do the BRRRR model, or why would you go get homes why don't you do subject to? So I'm going to explain subject to her, to you, while I'm explaining it to her. Hold on a second.
Not a problem.
Hey, do you want to understand subject to? Introduce yourself to this gentleman.
Hi.
How are you doing?
His name is Don Costa.
Hi, Don. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Amazing. Thank you. I'm here for the day to learn about subject twos.
So she's here at a property that I currently own. This is a house that I took down. I took title. We already funded this deal, and I'm about to renovate it and put it back on the market. But she flew in from Los Angeles, right? And she's looking to build her rental portfolio. So here's what a subject to is. A subject to, in a very basic sense, is one of two ways to buy a house underneath creative finance. So creative finance is just basically saying I'm using somebody else's money to buy the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Subject to means there's an existing mortgage in place or an existing debt. You want to see something crazy? Check this out. This is the first house I ever bought an air conditioning unit subject to as well. There's a loan on this brand new air conditioning. So subject to means I'm purchasing an asset, keeping the debt in place, and that debt is still in the seller's name. So this air conditioning unit, train unit, brand new, some air conditioning company sold it to the seller for $11,000. They can afford it, so they put a loan or a lien against the property, and there's a payment on that lien, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a first position, which is the mortgage, and then there's a second position, which is the air conditioning unit. So I purchased both the house and the air conditioning unit subject to, meaning I own it on title. I'm the owner of record. However, the debt is still in the seller's name.
Okay. So just for those who are out there listening who've never heard it before, essentially in a nutshell, it's you are keeping whatever debts or encumbrances are against the property in place, and you're taking over those payments and you're running with it. So,
right.
Which is a very cool strategy to do. It allows you to leverage money in a really, really creative way, and you're able to buy a lot more assets with a lot less money on the line in the long run. Plus, you don't have the issues with having to jump through hoops with bank financing and all kinds of other crazy stuff that you normally have to do when you're
no qualifying. Like a lot of people think it's an assumption. I'm like, no, it's not an assumption. The bank doesn't even know I exist. They have no department in the world in any bank that unless it's like some small hometown bank or maybe a private lender, they have no idea that I am the owner of the property. Right.
So, very, very cool. So what are some of the insurance? Because I know that's a big question. What are some of the things that you do to insure a property in order to make sure that you're protected, but not, I guess, causing you any issues with the lender or, that kind of thing?
So what I do is I have my insurance agent do all the work for me. It took us about 6 months to find an agent that kind of understood subject to and creative financing, but he does it for a lot of people in other states. He's licensed in multiple states. What he does is he calls the mortgage company with the seller before I close escrow, and he transfers insurance over to a new insurance policy with me as the main insured and the seller as an additional insured. And the reason why that's important is because let's say that in a year, I can't find the seller and the house burns down. I don't want to have to go to the insurance company and have to have them write me and the seller a check, or they'll actually write the seller a check, and then I have to hunt down the seller to get that check for the burn down or the claim, right?
Right.
So we changed the policy to a renter's policy or landlord policy, and we beef it up. And then we also put an umbrella policy on all of our properties. We have a $10 million umbrella policy on all of our properties. But my insurance agent, who I'm actually creating a video with in the studio here in the next couple of weeks to better explain this, like in a 30 or 40-minute video to everybody who has questions, he'll break down exactly what he does. But we cancel the old insurance and put our new insurance in place with the help of the seller. And then we make sure we have a power of attorney for any future adjustments.
Okay. Now, subject to one of the biggest fears that people have is a due on sale clause, right? So
Yes.
A lot of lenders these days have a due on sale clause, and technically a subject to transaction does trigger that.
Right.
What are some of the things what are no-nos? What are some of the things people shouldn't do to avoid triggering the due on sale?
Love it. That's a great question. So I do have a way. I don't necessarily have a way around the due on sale clause, but there is insurance out there that you can buy insurance for the due on sale clause, that if the due on sale clause does get called, there is an insurance company that will refinance the underlying note with the exact same terms and replace that mortgage for you. Just FYI. So even if that is an issue and that pops up, we pay for insurance about an extra $500 a year I have due on sale clause insurance. But
okay. Whoa. Because I've never heard of that before.
I know a lot of people have not heard of this. And every time I talk, even guys that have been doing this 10, 15 years are like,
Right.
wait, what? So
Okay.
there's two companies, and there's a third company now that's actually reached out to me, and they want me to be an affiliate for them. But there's a couple of companies been around for about 10 years that charge about $500 a year to provide due on sale clause insurance. And as long as that house is in the first 20 years of the amortization schedule, they will insure that property against the due on sale clause. So if the due on sale clause gets actually called and the lender accelerates the note, that company will insure against it and refinance you out with the exact same terms, whatever's left on that mortgage.
Okay. So that's a new one for me. That's actually,
I'll share that information with you offline.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. So, and that is a situation where, wow. Okay. No, that's cool. So
but let's say that doesn't happen. Here's a couple of ways with all the gray hairs, all the people that I've done business with, the due on sale clause, in my experience and my understanding with everybody that's in my mastermind, number one, adjustable rate mortgages. So anytime you run into an adjustable rate mortgage, which a lot of times in 03 all the way through 07, a lot of guys were taking houses subject to with adjustable rates and putting themselves in bad situations. So that's number one. You send me an adjustable rate, a reverse mortgage, or a private lender with an interest only loan, I won't even touch it. Right. But anything conventional, FHA, VA, whatever, I will touch those. But I make sure, number one, the seller never stays in the property.
Right. Which I think is important.
So important. There's guys that are like, oh, hey, the seller wants to stay in the property. And I've done it a couple of times where I close escrow and I let them stay in the property 30 days. What will happen is that seller now gets emotional that they're no longer the owner of the property, but the debt's in their name. And that's good and fine when they've already left and moved on, and now it's out of sight, out of mind. But when they're living in the property that they left the debt in their name on, that's a different story. Right.
Yeah, no, I can tell you right now, because like I said, I did this on dozens and dozens, and if not a few hundred transactions in 03 to 07. And there were a few times where I let the seller stay for even a couple of months, and it never turned out good. It always turned out badly.
They want more money. There's been times where people go, oh, like when I'm in the appointment, in fact, like this house, I closed the seller right here in the living room on the other side of this wall for me. And I explained to the seller how I make money, and they really don't understand it the first time they hear it. But if you close escrow and you now are renting, they are renting from you. Number one, you purchase that property. You got to raise that payment in order for you to cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. Now that seller is living in their own house that they don't own, but the debt's still in their name, and they're paying more money to the man. It is not a recipe for success. Those people get so pissed. And I've had people trying to extort me for $10,000, and I've gone through the ringer, Don, and I'm sure you have too.
You and me both.
Yeah. So I'd say number one, sellers don't stay in the property. I don't mind doing a post possession of like a week, but I would rather just, I would rather hold off close of escrow if possible and make the mortgage payment for them in the time being if they can't afford it, than close escrow before they're out of the house.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. There's something like you said about being out of sight, out of mind that changes the whole dynamic. And when they're there, that entitlement kind of sets in. Like it's still theirs. They still feel like that ownership is still there, and it does open the door to a can of worms. The only issue that I've ever had legally was a sub-2 that I let somebody stay in the property, and I
love to hear that stuff. That's the stuff like. So she's not new to real estate investing as a total, but she's new to understanding subject to, which is why I like to have her here, because your audience obviously is listening to this, listening to you and I.
Right.
Number one, I love that that's the only time you've had an issue was letting the seller stay in the house, because I get a lot of people that are confused by that when I say that's my rule number one, don't let the seller stay in the house.
Yeah, that's the ultimate no-no to me. You just do not do it. It's like you break up with an ex, right? You have an ex-girlfriend, an ex-boyfriend, and if they move on in a new relationship and they're somewhere else in another city or another place a few hours away or 30 minutes away or whatever, you're not seeing them every single day, you can move on with your life. But if you're sharing the house with them and they're moving on and it's in your face,
not a good look.
You can't move on with your life. It's the same thing with leaving a homeowner in a subject to property. It's the same thing.
So that's number one. And the other thing too, is in my disclosures of the title company, we make sure the seller signs an agreement that states if they ever call the bank and they ever try and disrupt the agreement, that we deed the property back into their name. We immediately put a $50,000 lien against the property, and we foreclose on the house.
Okay. All right.
So they sign away off on all that stuff, saying, hey, we'll never call the lender. We'll never blah, 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 blah. So those are the things. Like, the seller is typically the number one way people get the due on sale clause evoked or called. I would say number two would be adjustable rate stuff. So when the market changes and shifts, the banks are looking through their P&Ls, they're looking at their balance sheets. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Right. And then number three is insurance, people doing the insurance improperly.
Right.
And they're just canceling the old insurance after they close escrow. It throws up a red flag, and somebody in the bank is like, wait, what's going on? The insurance, nobody told us insurance is changing.
Right.
So those three, outside of that, it's really rare and random circumstances. And then I had a guy in a small town that's in one of our masterminds, and he's like, dude, all these little hometown banks where the owner of the bank is also the guy that, you know, runs all the P&Ls and does all that stuff. You try and buy a house subject to with a bank like that as the underlying mortgage, a lot of times it'll get called due because those guys actually have their eyes on the prize, you know?
Right. They're watching. So
Right.
Very cool. So one of the only other issues that I've ever had with a sub-2 property was the owner filing bankruptcy on me while I had the property. So let's talk about that. Have you had that happen before?
We've had it happen 4 times.
Okay.
And all 4 times we were able to get the bankruptcy judge to omit the mortgage in the bankruptcy, showing them that, hey, we're the owner of the property, we're making payments, all that kind of stuff. Obviously subject to is legal. It's not an illegal transaction.
Right.
So we show them, hey, we're the owner of the property. The seller does not benefit from anything. And then the mortgage company in all 4 situations was aware of the subject to and allowed the subject to continue going forward with us making payments. It cost me money. It probably cost me $2,500 each time we had to go and work this all out. But I would much rather spend $2,500 to keep the house out of bankruptcy, or at least that debt out of bankruptcy. But then through that practice, Don, that's when I found out about this company that does the due on sale clause insurance, because I was like, there's got to be a better way around this, that if anything ever happens on the bankruptcy side, which it's going to happen, right? Have you ever had that happen, by the way?
Yeah, I have. I had somebody file bankruptcy. My situation was a little different. And part of it was just because I interjected myself like a moron, because I was young and stupid and thought that I knew everything. But I went and sat through the meeting of the creditors, and the trustee, one of the creditors was fighting the trustee wanting to do a fraudulent transfer, which essentially is if the property transferred for less than market value within a 4-year period, the creditors can claim that that was done to hide the asset. And so they were trying to claim fraudulent transfer. The trustee was not really having it, but kind of listening. And I spoke up and mentioned that I was there like an idiot and interjected put my foot in my mouth. But essentially the long and the short of it is I settled, and I had to pay 12 grand to the creditors to let me go on with that property, which I still made a lot of money on, by the way. It wasn't like
so they allowed you to continue to making payments, and they kept the debt in place.
They kept the debt in place, and I continued making payments, and I kept ownership of the property. But I did cost me 12 grand. And I will, with the caveat, it's more so because, look, if no one calls on you, don't say a word. And that's a lesson I learned. But so it was more so because I stuck my foot in my mouth. I think that.
But you know what? You learned a $12,000 lesson that probably will make you $1 million over your lifetime.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Keep your mouth shut. But but in a nutshell, that's the only thing that I would say that, you know, the fraudulent transfer side, I know you're talking about doing a lot of properties at or near market value. If you're well below market value, creditors can try to claw that back, and you need to know that going into it.
Right.
So
100%.
Yeah.
Really 2 avatars for us. I mean, there's an avatar of the seller finance, which we haven't talked about. You know, the seller finance is the opposite of all this, where essentially the seller owns the property free and clear, and they're financing it back to us on whatever terms we decide, right? A lot of those, because, you know, we just go after the houses. So in Maricopa County, 60% of the properties in Arizona are paid off, no encumbrances at all. So pretty impressive amount of houses to grab after. And so we just call people and say, hey, if we were able to pay you full market value, would you be willing to give us terms? Right. And so we go after those. We just got a contract today, 0% down, 0% interest, closing costs, taking over somebody's rental property. Their renter's moving out in 2 weeks. And we're paying them $400 less than what we can rent it for. So I'll cash, essentially that's a free house. which I love seller finance, but they're not everywhere. Subject to, which, especially you knocking doors in the pre-foreclosure arena, those are everywhere. If you wanted a subject to every day, Don, you could knock doors and get a sub to every day. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree 100%, especially in the market like it is right now. Like 2003 to about 2006, it was really hot, and then right now it's a great time to be doing it. There's plenty of equity in properties now, and of course you have the creative way of doing it when there's no equity. But I loved it. I started before Google and GPS. I had Microsoft Streets and Maps, and I'd print out the maps and I'd flip through them, and I'd drive about 20 houses a day, and I just do my thing and knock on doors. And I loved it. It was a great time in my life. I wish I could do it. I probably should be doing it again because I loved it so much, but I have a business to run now, so it's a little different. But
it's too hard, man. That's why we have a door knocking team. We have 4 people, 2 people on the east side and 2 people on the west side of town. And then we have a closer that travels behind them and just closes the deals. But that's where we primarily get our subject twos from, either our dead wholesale leads or kind of sleep on them.
We're having a little bit of technical difficulty here with you, Pace. I'm cutting in and out a little bit here.
Oh, let me go outside.
Yeah.
You hear me okay right now?
I can hear you okay right now while you're moving. I
was just talking about our door knocking team, and how powerful the door knocking is. I'd say, so in our business, I have 2 businesses just like you. I have a wholesale business and a subject to business. Number one, I wholesale a lot of subject twos as well, but the subject twos I keep, that's just my buy and hold properties. But we primarily get, our subject twos with no equity. They primarily come from door knocking.
Right. Let me ask you this. So wholesaling sub twos, we'll get into door knocking in a minute, because that was a passion of mine. I think it'd be a great conversation. But when you're wholesaling subject twos, how are you vetting the buyers? I mean, I'm sure you're looking at making sure that you're picking buyers. You're not?
No, because I would if I was doing a wrap or if I was selling to the end buyer. What I'm doing is I'm selling to another investor. So okay. I'm finding an investor that wants to buy and hold that and turn it into a rental. So primarily most of my buyers are guys I already know. Like there's a guy here that owns 200 rental properties, and he goes down to the local bank every time he gets a loan, and he puts 20% down, and that's how he acquires his properties. I started selling him subject twos because he comes into some of these deals where he just pays me a $5,000 or $10,000 fee on a no equity home. 3.5% interest rate that he gets into, doesn't have to qualify, doesn't even have to apply. Those $12,000, $15,000 all in. Whereas if he had to go down to the community bank, he'd be in $30,000 in cash, right? So the cash on cash return for a buy and hold investor is way better on the subject too. So I don't do wraps anymore. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't do seller finance. Like as a seller, as an owner of those properties, I'm not seller financing any of my properties any longer. I stopped doing that. I screwed it up one time. My third subject to I ever did, I wrapped it to an end buyer. So I raised my rate, brought a big down payment, like $35,000 to the table, and they deforeclose on him, right? So I go to foreclose on him, and I get a call from the district attorney, and they're saying, we got to complain about predatory lending, and that you knew these people were going to blah, 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 blah. We were investigating, and we want to know what's going on. So I stay away from wraps. I figure that out. I make sure I hire an RMLO and I have that buyer underwritten, but I haven't done a wrap in about 8.
So, okay, I'm going to cut you off there because I'm losing you again a little bit, and I want to make sure that we get everybody hears, because I know I made out what you said. So basically, you got a call from a district attorney. You did a wrap. You got a call from a district attorney questioning the whole transaction, because the likelihood of you taking advantage of the seller might have been there. And so that's something you need to consider when you're thinking about like Dodd-Frank issues and all kinds of other issues like that, because you become a lender when you do wraps. and they can claim that you're doing like predatory lending with borrowers and that kind of thing like that, and that your intention is to set them up for failure. So what you're saying is because of that, you're staying away from the wraps and just kind of wholesaling them off and keeping them for yourself, right?
Yeah, most of what I'm doing is lease options. So the ones that I keep for myself, I do lease options, or rentals. And then if I don't want the property, it's a house that I don't want to buy, or maybe I just don't have the capital to close on it, I will then assign that to another buy and hold investor.
Right. Very cool. So let's talk about, okay, so the buying of the properties at or near or even above the value, the current market value, that's a strategy that you're doing well right now. But how do you protect the downside when the market shifts? Because I've been through that, and I'll just to kind of throw my story out there. I did sub 2, I did owner carries, I did seconds, I did all kinds of crazy things. I had a setup where I wasn't going to have to work again for a while, and then the market turned, and a lot of that got wiped out. People stopped paying, got foreclosed on, a lot of crazy stuff happened, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I was supposed to make a year getting out of bed was suddenly gone, or without getting out of bed was suddenly gone. So how are you setting things up to protect yourself from the downside? And I want to preface that question with, to the audience, like I said before, I don't believe a 2008 is going to happen again in our lifetime. I know there's going to be a market correction, there's going to be changes, but I don't think a global or national catastrophe like 2008 is going to happen. But if it did, what are you doing to protect yourself from the downside?
Love that question. Hold on a second. Jamil, say bye to Dawn because you got to take her to the airport.
Bye, Dawn. Nice
Bye,
to see you
Jamil.
guys.
Hey,
Bye,
nice seeing you, man.
audience.
So I'll give you a call. I'll email you other subject twos because this is one I already took it down.
Yep.
I'll even email you the numbers on this one so you can understand why I bought it. And then we have like 7 other.
East Valley, Southeast Valley.
Okay,
Yes,
you do that
yes.
condo.
Yeah, go to the condo. I'll talk to you later, bro.
Okay.
See ya. I said cash. Don, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, we're having a rough time with the signal a little bit, but we're making it out pretty good. So we're gonna soldier through this, and maybe I'll circle back and get you when you're in your studio another time.
Sorry, I would have planned to be in front of a computer, but Jamil messed up my whole day.
No
kidding.
worries. No worries.
He didn't. So that's a really great question. I think it's one of the most important questions you can ask anybody that's doing subject to. So first and foremost, I actually, believe it or not, don't actually make any money from my subject twos. I don't take anything home. So let's say my company, office, insurance, those kind of things, I net $22,000 a month. Out of that $22,000, I don't take any of that home. I stockpile that cash. We either acquire more properties with 6 months of operating expenses for when a crash does happen. Does that make sense?
It does. You cut out a little bit again, so just reiterate that one more time.
So I make sure that we have 6 months of cash on every single property stockpiled and ready for when a crash or if a crash happens again.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and is there anything else you're doing besides that to protect your downside, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, we take a look also at vacancy and repair. So let's take a look at like a house that will rent for $2,000 in a really good market. I take 20% off of that and I assume the worst. So let's say the market crashes and I lose 20% on my market rents, right? Which hasn't happened in 50 years in Maricopa County, but let's just say it does. That's where we base our numbers on. I make sure that there's 20% padding between what my debt service or what my total cost on that deal is and what I can rent it out for. So in the worst of the worst, I have 6 months of cash on every single property I own. And I also have a 20% buffer on all of my rent rates.
Okay. Very cool. Very smart. Okay. Let me ask you this. As far as the door knocking goes and stuff like that, what's some of the best practices that you found when it comes to door knocking, and getting somebody to even talk to you about selling their property?
Oh my gosh, this is so good. So this is, Brent Daniels and Batch Skip Tracing guys.
Yes, absolutely.
So I partnered with them. We actually have a door knocking app that's coming out in about 3 weeks. We haven't, you actually, this is the first place that we've even talked about it. We've been testing it and running it for about the last year. Here's the thing with my door knocking team. My door knocking team, I have 5 guys on the team. 4 people actually set appointments. 1 person closes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 people that are out knocking doors, the only thing they say to the seller is this: "Hi, Don. My name is Pace. I know nothing about real estate, but I work for a company that helps sellers in foreclosure. Can I have one of the owners of the company call you and tell you what we do?" That is literally the script that we say at the door.
Really? Wow. Okay. That's cool.
Think about it, because now you're not hitting them with the sales approach. You're not lying to them. You're not putting all this words in the mouth of an appointment setter. Basically, the appointment setter just tells them full transparency. Hey, I know nothing about real estate. I'm not going to try and talk circles around you. I'm not the enemy. I'm not here to foreclose on your property. I'm just here to let you know that there is a company that exists and I can connect you with them if you're willing to have a conversation.
Okay. That's actually a really cool approach. So I door knocked myself, and if you don't mind me throwing my script out, but it was a little.
I'd love to hear your script.
So mine was really simple. I just knocked on the door, and they'd open the door, and I'd say, "Hi, my name's Don. I've came across some information that you're having some issues with your mortgage, and I happen to help people in this situation, and I wanted to see if I can help you find a solution." And that was the extent of it. They would always tell me they had it taken care of. My response was always, "That's great. I help people in a situation all the time. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing?" Of course, that always opened the door to them telling you that they don't really have it taken care of. They're
of course
waiting for Santa to bring them a check. And then I would talk to them a little bit more, and I'd always get permission to come back for a follow-up appointment. That's great. Those things don't always work out. Do you mind if I come back and check on you in about a week? So that was my thing, but I was the one doing the door knocking, and I was the one doing the buying. But I love how you have it set up where you're having the appointment set or know nothing, because the whole point, I think, of my way and your way is disarming them. You got it.
Yes.
They got their head in the sand. They're scared. They're scared to check their mailbox. They think that they're hoping and praying for something to come save them. And so the first thing you need to do is be non-threatening and disarm them. So I love how you guys are doing it.
I appreciate that. So when I would door knock myself, and when Matt, one of my door knock, he's the door knock manager, when we just had a really small team, we would go out and knock doors. And that's it. Your script is very similar to the script that we would say, except I would say something along the lines of, "Hey, Don, my name is Pace. I'm sure you're getting slammed with text messages and phone calls and all that kind of stuff. I really apologize for bothering you. I work for a company that has 7 ways to either keep your property or to stop the foreclosure. Do you mind if I share any of those with you?"
Yeah.
And then it piques their interest. Like, wait, what 7 ways? What are the 7 things? Blah, 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 blah. Right.
Right.
So kind of non-threatening. But when you start trying to scale a business and hire employees, trying to have them explain the 7 items is an impossible task. And so I just started telling people, you know what, why don't we just be overly transparent? And why don't we just tell people exactly what the truth is? Because if somebody knocked on my door and said, "Look, I know nothing about real estate. I just know that public records show that you've got a signal over here saying that you're in trouble. I work for a company that helps people in trouble. Can I connect you with the person on the phone?"
Right. That's fantastic. No, it's great. I agree. It's a really smart approach, and it's a great way to scale door knockers. So
I think, Don, I don't know about you, but I think door knocking is going to make a massive tidal wave comeback, because as the carriers on cell phones start restricting the receiving of text messages and phone calls, it's going to get more expensive, and only the best of the best guys that know how to work around those carriers are going to be able to get through to these sellers on cold call and text messaging.
I agree. So I guess my question would be, and maybe you've already done this because I'm not in the field as much. I'm not in the field door knocking at all anymore. I'll be honest. I did pre-foreclosures and tax defaults, right? And that made sense because those were the properties in distress. And honestly, those are the people that aren't answering their phones and aren't checking their mail when you're sending letters, because they're like I said, they don't want to get that notice. So the best way to get to them is knocking on the door. What about other leads? The non-owner occupieds and are the vacants or the homeowners or whatever that have equity. I mean, have you found that it makes sense to start tackling or door knocking on other leads other than the distress stuff?
So I only door knock in Phoenix, and Phoenix has currently 1,800 active homes in the foreclosure process.
Right.
And with our team of 5 people, we can only hit about 500 of those per month. So the way that we do it is I'll designate 100 doors per knocker, and that knocker will continually knock those same 100 doors over and over and over. And as houses fall off the list, we'll add a couple here and there to keep them at their 100 deal. But geographically, we only have the door knockers knock near their home. There are so many more houses in foreclosure right now, even though the market is hot, than I can even touch. So we have not spread past tax default and foreclosure process on our door knocking just because there's too many opportunities already.
Fair enough. I got 2 questions for you. So the first question is, do you guys leave anything behind if nobody's home or something
Yes.
with the homeowner? Okay.
So here's the number. This is a great, I love talking about door knocking, by the way. So
Right.
thank you for that. So the way we look at it is if I'm brand new, so like your listeners, let's say they're trying to get into wholesale. If I'm absolutely brand new, I can get a contract out of 150 door knocks. Okay. Whatever the market, just all the people we've tested, all the people that we've been doing our alpha testing on the app, and even before the app, the numbers are basically the same. If you're brand new and you know nothing about real estate, you will get a contract almost by default by knocking 150 doors. Okay. If you're pretty decent, like a Dawn or a Pace at door knocking, you're going to be 1 out of 100. And here's how those 100 doors look. Out of 100 doors knocked, 70 of those doors will not answer.
Right.
And you kind of feel the same way, Don?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. You're going to have, and cause it's depending on what time of day you go and all kinds of stuff that plays into that. They're working or they're just not going to answer.
Right. So 1 out of 70 of those. So all of the 70 that don't answer, we leave a note. And we leave a note. Can you hear me okay?
I can. You're doing good. Yeah. Where you're at right now is perfect.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll leave a note on either the front door or the car in the driveway. If there's no car, we put it on the door. If there is a car, we always put it on the driver's side door, and we put it right on the glass. And what we do is we don't do business cards. We don't do flyers. We literally do the most basic sticky note with a handwritten pen that just says, "Hey, here to help, give me a call." And then the real name of the actual door knocker.
Okay. Very cool.
Very transparent, nothing magical. And just by sheer numbers alone, I'd say, let's say you go and leave 70 notes out of 100, you're not getting a contract. What we found is that you have to leave about 1,000 notes to get a contract from a note callback.
Right. Or you have to go back and re-knock that property. I mean, honestly, that's really where it's at. I would do, and this is way back when, but I did a trifold. I did a 8.5 by 11 sheet, bright yellow, like neon yellow paper. And the reason why I did that was because when I went back, I'd always be able to see it across the room. It was for me, not for them. And I'd see it on the coffee table and I would say, "Hey, I'm the guy who left that letter the other day."
Oh, I like that. I've not thought about that.
Yeah. And so it was bright yellow so that I could see it wherever it was at in the room. So, because it was always somewhere in the living room generally. So
I love that.
Yeah. So, and that helped build that rapport. I've been here before, I'm the guy who left that behind. So
that's really smart. I really like that. So out of the other 30 doors, we are typically getting into 5 of those houses. So you knock 100 doors, you're getting into 5 houses. And out of those 5 houses, we get 1 contract.
Okay. Very cool number.
And now here's the thing. If I go knock those doors again 100 times, right? And now there's 99 doors left, right? I just bought 1. Now there's 99. If I go knock those again 1 time, all 99 of those, I'm typically getting another contract by the follow-up, like you said.
Right. Follow up in anything. I don't care what it is you're doing. I don't care if it's sending out postcards or text messages or door knocking. If you are not following up, you're leaving money on the table. The only way to make any marketing channel successful is follow up. And that's, I want to stress that. And I'm sure you say that to people, like, do you think you're just going to knock doors and get a deal every time? That's sometimes you're going to get it, but it's not going to be the case every time. You're going to have to hit that door a couple of times before you're going to get somebody to answer or let you in, or you have to come back and build rapport. I don't know how many times I went and talked to them about their dog and their car and their life, just to break down the wall so we could have a conversation about their problem.
Yeah, I love it. And the thing I tell people all the time, because people go, guys like you, Don, and guys like me, we have the ability to go talk to people about anything, anytime, right? And so a lot of people who are trying to listen to your show or other shows, they ask me, "Man, I'm really not good with people." And I go, you know what? You will outbeat anybody that's really, really good with people, as long as you have two things. And those two things are consistency and timing.
Right.
If you are consistently there and you're consistently knocking doors or texting or calling, you will outbeat the guy that has amazing rapport who's not consistent.
Agreed. 100%. 100%.
So door knocking, that's why we have the door knocker knock the exact same 100 doors. And then when doors fall off that list, our software will update the foreclosure list every hour. So we know when houses fall off and when houses come in, and anything in that geographical area is targeted to that door knocker. And they have about an average of 100 doors to knock every single week. They knock, you probably remember when you're knocking doors, you probably could do about 20 doors in a day.
Yeah, I would, my map was about 20-ish. Yeah. And it depended on the conversations I had or didn't have was whether or not I got through it or was able to do more. So, so back when I was doing it, it was real easy to pick up the phone and call the attorney or the foreclosure department of the bank and get a postponement or even negotiate short sales. We didn't have all the processes because it was before the crash.
Right.
What are you finding like now? Are you a judicial state or are you a non-judicial state in Arizona?
Arizona, we go through a trustee and we
notice trustee sale, right? Notice trustee sale, right? Like California. Okay.
Yep. Just like California.
Do you find that the lenders or the attorneys now are willing to work with you guys on the reinstatements and all that kind of stuff like that? Are they being pains in the butt? I mean, how postponements, are they fairly easy nowadays now that they've gotten through the crash stuff, or what are you looking at?
So it's both. So it's so bad, but it's also very good. It's bad because I have a full-time employee that's all they do. All they do is work on reinstatements. It's my wife. My wife is on the phone all day long doing reinstatements. I also have a transaction coordinator above her efforts, but my wife, she just stays on the phone. The reason it's bad is because it's just hard to get to a decision maker inside the servicing company or inside whoever is making that decision that can ultimately say yay or nay. And it's like, can we please talk to loss mitigation department? Can we please talk to this? And it sometimes takes 45 minutes or an hour just to talk to the right person. Right. But the more and more you talk to maybe the same servicing company, we've done a pretty good job over the last year and a half, 2 years of documenting who needs to be talked to when there's an extension that needs to be made. So what we'll do is we'll go to the trustee and we'll go to the servicer or the mortgage company and we'll show them the purchase contract and we'll say, hey, we need 30 days to close and we need an extension. And sometimes that effort takes about 5 hours of man hours to get that done.
Okay.
They'll do it, but you have to find the right person. I think you guys probably run into the kind of same stuff.
Yeah. You know, it was, I think it was a little easier back when it was my primary source of getting deals. Like I said, pre-crash, it was a whole different, it was wild west. It was a whole different world. I used to get on the phone, negotiate my own short sales in the matter of an hour.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's not the same anymore. So, but I think the key here I was trying to get at is no matter what, when you kind of said it, you got to find the person that's going to give you the yes. And you may take the no and then go and let me talk to your supervisor. Let me talk to the next person. Let me talk to the next person. I don't know how people just take the no. They won't do the extension. Cause like if you're 2 or 3 days from the auction, even if you're going to reinstate the loan, you know, you before you close, which I don't necessarily advise doing, you still need to get that extension to make sure the bank accepts it all, you know? So
100%,
you know, and you can't take no for an answer. You got to climb that ladder. And if you climb to the right person, you're going to get the yes.
I had a guy out of California, Louis, call me this morning. He's like, hey, I've got a seller going to foreclosure tomorrow. What do I do? And I told him basically the steps, you know, get them on the phone, get the loss mitigation department, tell them you have a contract on the property, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, man, they keep saying no. They keep saying no. I go, okay, do me a favor, call your title company and have them call me. So he had his title company call me and I get on the phone real quick with the title company. I said, hey, have you guys ever postponed a foreclosure? And they're like, oh yeah, we do it all the time. So I call Louis and I go, dude, just let your title company do the hard work. Just hand it over to them. And the title company knew exactly who to call. They got it done in like 30 minutes. And Louis like, man, I've been trying to do this for the last 5 hours. So sometimes just lend on the people in your circle and lean on them to do the hard work.
Right. Agreed. 100%. So last question, you have the door knockers. How do you pay your door knockers? I mean, obviously I'm sure it's by the deal. Are you doing it by the hour? What is it?
So I've learned, and I think you've probably learned very similar lessons in life, is that if you pay people by the hour, they'll work accordingly.
Mhm.
and you attract a very horrible type of person, unfortunately. And I get messages sometimes, people like hate messages like, I work by the hour and I heard what you said on Don's show. You're blah, blah, blah. In general, when you hire by the hour, you get people that work by the hour. And so what we do is we have a eat what you kill policy in our company. Our entire company is eat what you kill. And I overpay my door knockers. My appointment setters make 20% of the deal. So if I wholesale it and I make $15,000, the guy who walked up the door and said, hi, Don, my name is Pace. I know nothing about real estate. Would you mind blah, 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 blah. That person made $3,000 on that door knock contract.
Okay.
So now above and beyond that, I have a guy that actually goes and closes that. His name is Matt. And I pay Matt 25% to go in and close it. So my contracts, I'm paying 45% of my deal to my door knocking sales team because number one, I'm busy. I have several other businesses. It's the same thing as you. You've got your podcast, you're creating value for people. You've got your mastermind, you're doing all these things, you're traveling. You don't have time to manage a door knocking team. So I allow my compensation to take over some of the management for me and attract the right people. And so on an average, let's say $15,000 door knock assignment fee, my company is really only bringing in about $8,000.
Well, and that, I'm not going to argue with that because to me that makes sense. When I was door knocking way back in the day, I had some friends do it with me, and I give them half. I give them 50% to go out and do it, but they would close and bring me the deal. But door knocking is a different beast, and I think people that just run acquisitions team might be screaming at that number. Well, I only pay my acquisitions 10%. Well, your acquisitions is waiting for you to set an appointment, and then they're going on that appointment. If you have an in-house, like we close over the phone, our in-house team gets 7.5%, but they're sitting here waiting for the phone to ring, and then they close it. Door knocking is a whole different animal. You got to get in your car,
Yes.
you got to drive around, you got to get out in the heat or the rain and go cold and go knock on the door and talk to strangers and talk them off ledges. And it's a whole different beast. You need a different type of person, and you definitely got to compensate for that. So I definitely agree.
Yeah. And then on top of it, from a business owner standpoint, I don't really have any lead costs other than I have a national pre-foreclosure list that I pay $3,000 a month for. And that gives me all foreclosures nationwide updated every hour. So that's a little bit pricey, but it's only $3,000 a month. So that's my only cost for my door knocking leads. Right. So my contract, let's say that I make $8,000 after I pay my sales team. That's very close to what my net is going to be. Well, I shouldn't say net, but it's my gross before cost of overhead. But when I'm doing my SMS and my cold calling campaigns and I'm skip tracing and I'm pulling lists and I got cold callers and I got all this other stuff, man, that's sometimes 30, 40% of the deal right out of the gate before I even get a contract.
Right.
So I think door knocking is magical. I feel like I net more money by paying my sales team more just because the cost of those leads is less expensive. Getting in front of them doesn't require a big abundance of marketing.
Right. And you're going to have a hungrier team that's going to go out there and get more deals for you and all that kind of stuff like that. So
100%.
Very cool. So I've had you for about an hour, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. I can see it's getting darker back there, and I'm sure you want to go home to your family. So something I definitely want to circle back and have another conversation with you about for sure. What advice would you give somebody that's just starting out, like right now today? What advice do you give somebody that was like just brand new and didn't know any better?
So I think you and I, this is probably the number one question that both you and I answer on a daily basis. Like you probably have people DM you have people email you, text you, whatever. And they just say, hey man, I need a mentor. I need help. So I love this question, and it's the same question over and over. And I answer it very similarly every day. The answer to the question is, let's say that I'm a guy that has no money. I have no prospects. I have nothing. I literally have a bicycle and one pair of clothes with no cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do is no joke, I would go to, this is a very extravagant answer, and I'll give you a second answer really quick. The crazy answer is I would go to a homeless shelter and I would sleep at a homeless shelter. I would go to a title company and I would ask the title company for the latest and greatest foreclosure list. And I would get a foreclosure list and start knocking doors. I would make sure that I go and knock 100, then I go and knock another 100 until I got a contract. And I would then find somebody that would help me offload that deal and actually pay me my commission up front. So for example, I had a guy in Atlanta last week. Jamil and I were in Atlanta. This guy's walking for dollars,
right?
Knocking houses. I paid him his $10,000 assignment fee up front once title cleared. Even though we're not actually going to close escrow on that for another 30 days, I paid him up front because he took a discount on his assignment fee by asking me to pay for it up front. If I had no money, I had no prospects, and you dropped me in the middle of town, that's what I would do. I would start door knocking and bicycling for dollars with nothing. Now, if I was a guy that maybe I'm a fireman or I'm a nurse and I have a day job and I have a little bit of means of advertising, where I would start is I would start texting. I would start an SMS campaign that can kind of automate and run without me. And then when I get home from my shift from, being a fireman, or my shift from being a nurse, I could manage those text messages, and I don't have to be tied to the phone all the time, if that makes sense.
It does. And I'm going to translate that for people who didn't get what you just said, which is if you're hungry enough and you're willing to do the work, get out there and do it, and you'll be successful. If you're not, all you're going to do is make excuses and look for reasons why you can't do it. And that's basically what Pace just said. So, and I love it. I love it. So, but it's so true. Perfect. All right. Well, man, tell everybody how to get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you, because I'm sure they're going to after this.
Instagram, Pace Morby. That's my primary source of information, my communication. Instagram on Pace Morby. And I do have a YouTube channel that we're releasing stuff a lot more. But I don't currently have coaching. I don't currently have any of that. I'm just here to help. So if you guys have questions, just DM me and I'm happy to help.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate having you on here, man. This was a lot of great information. I'm sure the audience got a lot out of. There was a lot of chatter I noticed in my comment section here. So definitely appreciate having you on. For those of you who got value out of this, make sure you are liking the show on whatever platform you are listening to it. Make sure you're subscribing, leaving comments. Reach out to me at The Real Don Costa on Instagram. I'm also all over Facebook. You can find me. If you have questions, go to doncosta@flipdog.com and email me. I respond to those as well. If you're interested in being part of a mastermind community, beinThisRoom.com. You go there and check out the Inner Circle Elite. We'd love to have you, and I'll definitely have Pace on again. Thank you for being with me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I'll see you next time with a better connection.
Perfect. Thank you.